Welcome to Room for Horror, the place where true terror lingers long after the story ends. Tonight's tale will take you deep into the walls of a house that was never meant to be lived in, a house that seems to breathe, remember, and punish. Turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and settle in. Ashwood Lane is the kind of street people drive past without noticing. It snakes along the outer edge of a rural township in Pennsylvania, hemmed in by thick groves of spruce and hickory, with only 5 houses standing on its mile-long stretch. One of those homes, the fourth one down, past the leaning red mailbox and the rusted wind chimes, was unoccupied for nearly 2 decades. Locals had their reasons for avoiding it. Some claimed the house had bad bones, others whispered about its last owner vanishing overnight, and one boy swore he'd seen something move behind its attic window even though the place was padlocked and empty. But people forget, stories fade, and eventually, someone always moves in. In this case, it was Daniel and Mara Whitmore. They weren't thrill seekers or believers in ghost stories. They were just tired of the city, tired of the rent, tired of the sirens and the strain. Mara had just left a high-pressure job in advertising, and Daniel, an artist by trade, wanted space to paint and teach online classes. When their realtor showed them the home on Ashwood Lane, it seemed like a miracle. 4 bedrooms, sprawling land, hardwood floors, a wraparound porch, all for far less than market value. They moved in late October. The trees had just started shedding their leaves, and a thick fog hugged the lawn the morning they arrived. Mara had laughed and said it felt like something out of a Stephen King novel. Daniel agreed, grinning. They were happy. For the first few weeks, nothing strange happened, unless you count the thermostat never working right. The house always felt cold, no matter how high they cranked the heat. But then came the tapping. It started subtly, like something knocking once from inside the walls. At first, they chalked it up to settling wood, maybe mice. But the taps got louder, more rhythmic. Always at night, always near their bedroom. One night, at 3:17 a.m., Mara woke to tapping beneath the floorboards. 3 short knocks. Then silence. Then 3 more. She woke Daniel, who groggily listened but didn't hear anything. He told her it was probably her dream bleeding into reality. Mara didn't believe him, but she let it go. The next morning, the basement door, bolted since the day they moved in, was wide open. They hadn't even gone down there yet. When Daniel clicked the light switch, nothing happened. The bulb had blown. Reluctantly, he grabbed a flashlight and made his way down the steps while Mara hovered at the top. Daniel descended the basement stairs slowly, flashlight in hand. The air was cold and heavy, carrying a faint metallic scent that made him uneasy. The basement was unremarkable: concrete floors, old paint cans, some cobwebs. But in the far corner stood a rusted metal chair, bolted to the floor. Cracked leather straps hung loosely from the chair's arms and legs, brittle with age. On the wall behind it, faint but visible, were scratch marks. Dozens of them. Small, frantic, uneven. They didn't look like animal scratches. They looked like fingernails. Daniel stared at them for a long moment before backing out. Old owners must have had some issues, he said. Maybe a kid or something. But neither of them had seen a child's room in the house. Nearby, an old metal table sat against the wall, stained and worn. Scattered on a nearby workbench were tools and bottles, covered in dust and grime. Nothing Daniel could immediately identify, but enough to unsettle him. Above, a heavy chain hung from the ceiling, swaying slightly as if moved by an unseen breath. Their dog Jasper, a friendly Labrador they'd had for years, growled low and refused to step further. Daniel didn't stay long. That night, the cold intensified. The fireplace refused to stay lit. Jasper began growling at corners. He refused to enter the hallway near the basement, even pulling back on his leash when Daniel tried to coax him near. And then there was the attic. Daniel first noticed it while inspecting the gutters. He'd never thought to check before, but there was an attic window at the very top, and it looked like it had been shattered from the inside out. Curious, he pulled the old ladder down and went up. The hatch resisted, as if something on the other side didn't want to open. When it finally gave, a gust of stale, freezing air hit him. He climbed up slowly, his flashlight beam shaking. The attic was bare, except for one thing. In the center, a circle had been drawn in chalk. Inside it sat a child-sized chair. Around the circle were dozens of tiny bones. Squirrel? Bird? He wasn't sure. Some were arranged like runes. Others were just scattered. Daniel didn't tell Mara. Instead, he swept the bones into a trash bag, erased the circle with an old mop, and bolted the attic shut. But that night, the tapping returned. This time it was inside their bedroom. Mara woke to the sound and sat up, frozen. The taps were coming from the closet door. 3 slow knocks, then silence. Then again. The dog whimpered at the foot of the bed. Daniel, pale and tired, reached for the closet knob with shaking hands. Nothing was inside. No explanation, no wind, no drafts, no mice. They started sleeping with the lights on. Mara began hearing whispers in the hallway. Not full sentences, just broken syllables, like someone speaking under their breath. Once she thought she heard her own name. They installed motion sensor lights, but they would flicker off and on when no one was moving. And once, in the dead of night, Mara woke to find all the lights in the house off, even the emergency bulbs. Everything. Total blackout. When Daniel went outside to check the fuse box, it had been ripped open. Not by weather, by something with fingers. By the 3rd week, they weren't speaking much. Mara spent hours scrolling real estate listings. Daniel tried to paint, but every canvas came out black. Literally, he would begin with color, then lose track of time, and when he looked again, the canvas would be covered in heavy dark brushstrokes. And always that feeling, like someone was in the room with them, just beyond sight. One night, Mara snapped. She demanded they leave. "We don't need to sell it," she said. "Just leave. I don't care." Daniel didn't argue. But when they tried to leave the next morning, the car wouldn't start. The tires were slashed. No animals, no vandals. They were stranded. That night, the dreams began. Mara saw a child standing at the foot of their bed, face obscured by long dark hair. She wasn't doing anything, just watching. Daniel dreamt of a man hanging in the attic. The rope creaked as the body swayed. When he woke up, his feet were covered in dust. The same gray, dry dust that coated the attic floor. They started sleeping in shifts. Eventually, Mara broke down and called a local pastor to bless the house. He didn't stay long. Walked in, muttered something in Latin, then stopped and stared at the basement door. Without another word, he turned and left. He never returned their calls. The final straw came a week later. They were eating dinner, cold leftovers, when Jasper suddenly lunged at the basement door, snarling, foaming at the mouth. He'd never acted like that before. He clawed at the door until his paws bled. Then stopped. Then whimpered. Then collapsed. They rushed Jasper to the vet, but he died before they arrived. They didn't stay the night. They left everything behind. Clothes, photos, and personal belongings. They drove until the gas tank hit empty, checked into a motel, and never returned. It was only later, weeks after they'd left, that Mara started digging into the history of the house. She had never stopped wondering what they had walked into, what had been waiting for them. The pieces came slowly. Old property records showed the house was built in 1931 by a man named Albert Greaves. His profession? A mortician, one of the only in the region at the time. It turned out he operated his practice directly from the basement. At the time, home embalming was unusual but not illegal. Newspaper archives told the rest of the story. Albert's wife, Genevieve, died just 2 years after they moved in, pneumonia, according to the official record. But neighbors claimed they heard screaming from the upper floor the night she died. And then there was their son, Jonas Greaves, age 10, gone without a trace in 1936. The police searched for weeks. The nearby river was dredged. Dogs were brought in. But Jonas had vanished. Albert was never charged. After that, things deteriorated. Reports from that era, buried in yellowed newspapers, claimed Albert was seen wandering the woods at night. Children dared each other to walk past the house during the day. Some said he was speaking to someone who wasn't there. In 1938, Albert was found dead. He had hanged himself in the attic. Authorities noted disturbing symbols drawn on the attic floor, arranged around a small chair. They also mentioned something else, animal bones scattered in a circle. One unconfirmed report suggested the bones were arranged in ritualistic patterns. Others said they heard chanting the night before he died. No one stayed in the house long after that. The next owners moved out within a year. Another family vanished completely in the 1950s. Car in the driveway, doors locked from the inside. In 1979, a man was found dead in the basement chair. No injuries, no drugs, just gone. One surviving relative tried to sue the county for selling a cursed property, but the case was dismissed. And so the house sat, empty, forgotten, until someone always moved in. By the time Daniel and Mara arrived, no one had lived there in nearly 18 years. No official record explained why. The listing agent simply said it had been tied up in estate issues. But anyone from town could have told them. Some houses don't want to be lived in. Some houses remember. Today, the place is chained shut behind rusted iron gates. The porch is collapsing. The roof line sags. But the attic window, the one shattered from the inside out, still stands. And sometimes, just sometimes, if you're passing by on a foggy night, you might think you see a shadow move behind the glass. Not a trick of the light. Locals say that the shadow behind the attic window is never the same twice. Sometimes a child's figure, sometimes a man swaying gently, forever trapped. Thank you for joining us tonight on Room for Horror. If this story gave you chills, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, stay out of the dark.